Entre comillas, Gibraltar es un peñón de una
Gibraltar
importancia
has
extraordinaria. No
an
existe
extraordinary
en ningún
importance.
lugar del
There is
mundo
no
una
other place in the
especie de
world
broche que permita cerrar
that
completamente una masa
allows
marítima como la del Mediterráneo. Algo parecido hay en el
the
Bósforo o Estrecho de
maritime
Estambul,
water
pero claro, el
bank
Mar
to be
Negro es mucho más
closed
pequeño que el
as
Mediterráneo.
Gibraltar.
Y allí cierro las comillas. Así describió Gibraltar el analista Armando Fernández
Armando Fernández described Gibraltar like this,
otorgándole una importancia geopolítica que
and
otros relativizan y
he
prefieren
gave it
decir
an
que la disputa que
importance
sobre él
geopolitical
hay es más por las bondades económicas que le
importance in the
otorga
world
esa
due to
negada
the
y
economic
oculta condición de paraíso fiscal.
characteristics
Lo cierto es
that
que
it
aunque
has
Sevilla,
as
solo que es
a
una roca
fiscal
grande, un lunar de piedra entre dos océanos,
haven,
un minúsculo enclave de ultramar,
this little
muchas han sido
place
las
in
banderas que
between
se han
the
levantado por su
oceans
soberanía.
have
¿Por qué? ¿Qué
shaken
significado tiene en
some
la
different
configuración
nations.
geopolítica del mundo actual?
What's its
¿Acaso un
geopolitical
residuo de
importance in the
ambiciones
world?
imperiales que creíamos extintas o
There
caducas?
are still some
¿Qué hay de esa
imperial
condición de paraíso
ambitions.
fiscal que explica bonanzas y puestos de
What's
trabajo
the importance of
envidiables
its
en su área y todo lo que le circunda? Es por
tax
eso que España,
haven
con tantas plazas
condition?
perdidas por la crisis y decisiones erráticas de gobierno,
Which
le reclama
crises
sobre
and
todo hoy
mistakes from
agujero
governments
negro de
have
las
caused
arcas
here?
españolas y cómo es que se vuelve escollo dentro del Brexit. Desde
What is its
Madrid, Pedro
importance
Sánchez
in
pregonaba,
Brexit?
con el Brexit perdemos todos, pero en Gibraltar España gana. Y desde el norte
With
de
Brexit,
Europa,
everyone
Theresa
loses,
May
but
lanzaba su
with
contrapunto.
Gibraltar,
Estoy
Spain
orgullosa
wins.
de que Gibraltar sea británica y su estatus
Theresa
no
May
cambia.
said that she's
Disputa por Gibraltar,
proud of
residuo de
Gibraltar
ambiciones
being
imperiales en
British.
nuestra jugada crítica
Today,
desplegado
the
de
battle
voz
for
está el tablero.
Gibraltar.
Acompañe.
It's today's topic.
Posturas parecen infranqueables.
Different positions
España, que ha
that
dicho que bien
seem to
podría
not to be
usarse el
changed
caso como vacuna
soon.
para disuadir a otros estados-naciones que consideren salir del bloque comunitario.
Spain is
Asegura
trying to
que a
use
partir del
this
divorcio de
conflict
Reino Unido y Unión Europea,
and
cualquier
Brexit
negociación
conflict
futura sobre Gibraltar tiene
to handle
que
differently
tener,
negotiations on
valga redundar,
Gibraltar.
el aval
They
de
are
España como
asking
individuo.
any
Y en este
negotiation
motivo, la
on
primera
Gibraltar
ministra
to
británica,
be
Theresa May,
approved
como la
by
propia primera
Spain.
ministra al frente, ha elevado el
Theresa
tono
May
sobre este peñón frente a
has got
acusaciones de
angry
varios
about
diputados
this
euroscépticos,
after
de
accusations
cierta
from
prensa,
different
de que
European
se había
representatives
cedido a
or
las
some
presiones
media
españolas. No hay negociación de soberanía
stating
acá,
that
reiteraba.
Gibraltar has finally accepted to go under Spain's sovereignty. EU, for the first time in these years that we've been members of the Union, Gibraltar is finally accepting to be part of Spain. Mr. Speaker, our message to the people of Gibraltar is clear. We will always be with them. We're proud of Gibraltar being British, and our position on Gibraltar's sovereignty will never change. I can tell Spain now that we're not interested in any break of our sovereignty. We're not interested in giving our sovereignty, jurisdiction or control to Spain. As Prime Minister May confirmed, Gibraltar's sovereignty will be totally British. The truth is that Gibraltar has been one of the geographical places of Europe that has been desired by many countries. Let's go to our map to check the privileges, the geographical privileges of Gibraltar. Gibraltar, or the Rock of Gibraltar, is also known as the Pillars of Hercules. It has 6 square kilometers in its extension, and it is the last colony under British administration that hasn't. Its main language is English, but many people speak Spanish there. Solid Rock continues with the Iberian Peninsula, and it only limits with Spain. It has 33,000, around 33,000 inhabitants. It has a lighthouse that lights the way of the strait that crosses this rock, and it connects two continents, Africa and Europe. It can be seen from the air, sea, or Costa del Sol. It has high biological diversity, 40% of its area is natural reserves. It's a tourism center, economic center, and its economy is based in tourism, fleet of ships, online gambling, financial services, and internet servers. It's considered as the most prosperous territory of the British jurisdiction, and it is also considered to be used as tax haven. It's on the UN's list of territories to decolonize. It is the only symbol of the British Empire that remains. Now we will analyze two articles published in the website RT Spanish to understand why Brexit reopens this conflict. When was Gibraltar a matter of negotiations? That's the title of this article. In March of 2017, when the UK tramited its papers and works to develop Brexit, there was an explanation saying that after the UK will abandon the EU, no agreement between the UK and EU will give them sovereignty on Gibraltar. Spain was granted, the sovereignty of Gibraltar was granted to Spain, and any affair related to this rock will be property of Spain. According to certain UN's agreements, UK won't be able to rule over Gibraltar if Spain doesn't allow it. We stay in RT to analyze how Brexit affects Gibraltar. The agreement of Brexit has a special protocol for Gibraltar. People from both sides of the border can cross it freely, but only if Spain agrees on it. This protocol will stop being applied once the transition period finishes on 2020. Now we go to the website Sputnik. That's our recommendation for today. Spain fights for sovereignty on Gibraltar. Francisco Herranz, international specialist, says Alejandro del Valle and Ignacio Molina have suggested a solution, a new solution, to establish an international territory that belongs to the EU, that is connected to Spain and not absorbed, but it will conserve its privileged relation with the UK, meaning that they should apply the formula of the city of the two crowns. We will ask about this to our guests, and we will see what they think of this. Many problems, many limitations, and a lot of ambiguity contained in these agreements already approved in the summit of Brussels that was approved on last 25th of November. We will check this with our correspondent from Madrid, Adriana Cardoso. Hello to all of our audience. EU approved the first text on Brexit, but apparently it's not clear who will win Gibraltar, Spain or UK. There have been conflicts on this between both countries, and always in regards to environmental, traffic or migration topics. After the EU summit, Spain and UK have proclaimed themselves as victorious on this theme. But there are disagreements on this treaty. Many of the affairs of Gibraltar must be treated by Spain. Theresa May said that Spain failed in regards to Gibraltar because they weren't able to modify this text on Brexit. A few days ago, we saw that Spain said that UK lost sovereignty on Gibraltar after Brexit was approved, but the UK does not agree with this. The opposition of Spain's government also says that Spain failed on this because the negotiations on Gibraltar are not clear, meaning that there is not clarity on who will win sovereignty and this, what will be affected by Brexit. We know that European Tribunal Court on this is not clear also on UK being able to eliminate Brexit in the future. This first text on Brexit still must be approved, and it's pending to see if some agreements will be also approved. Thanks for this important data. We might ask ourselves now, what will Brexit end up in? We know now that UK has been angrier about these topics, and we also want to find out the origins of this conflict. After the break, we will talk to our analysts. Stay with us. The conflict on Gibraltar, is there still some imperial remains in history? After 3 centuries since the conquer of the British on Gibraltar have passed, but not even diplomacy since the restoration of democracy in Spain have been successful to make clear who's the owner of Gibraltar sovereignty. We will see why it is called the rock of the conflict. After the death of Charles II, war winds came to the Iberic Peninsula. Philip V, the substitute of Charles II, and Charles from Austria took possession of this rock. In the middle of this war that divided Spain and Europe for more than 10 years, on August 4th of 1904, an English fleet came to Gibraltar in the midst of a rain of projectiles. The UK decided to change the sovereignty of Gibraltar and give its sovereignty to Queen Anna of England. Hostility continued after the Treaty of Utrecht, in which the Crown of England decided to take possession of this territory. The only article in this treaty says that if the land ends up being British, that's the only moment in which Spain can claim for its sovereignty. The 1514 resolution says that these previous resolutions are violating Spain's sovereignty. The problem here is not a colonial problem, but a self-determination problem. We're talking about the conflict in Gibraltar, this rock that is located in the southern part of the Iberic Peninsula. We're joined by Carlos Martinez, international analyst. He's in Spain, and Francisco Peña Torres, also international analyst and professor in the University of Sorbonne. How can we solve this question that we have? It is clear that the conquer of the British Empire was not a coincidence, so we're going to talk to you one by one. Is this conflict a problem of national identity, an economic problem? We must understand that this has an important condition as tax haven. Or is it a geopolitical conflict due to its strategic position, location? We start with Carlos. Thank you for this invitation. There are different factors on this conflict. First is nationalism from England and Spain. There is also this geopolitical factor, but we gotta consider that the UK and Spain are part of NATO, and they are working for the empire. Now, it is true that Gibraltar is a tax haven. Spain has many businesses there without paying taxes. But the question on Gibraltar must be understood as a whole group of background and controversy. The majority of inhabitants in Gibraltar consider themselves to be part of the UK. But now all the problems that the UK are causing are scaring everyone. But still, Gibraltar wants to be part of the UK and have benefits in Spain. What do you think about this, Francisco? Well, it is clear that there is a factor regarding reivindication of Spain and national identity, but it is also a problem in which, despite the advances on the contents of technology and development, Gibraltar is a geopolitical factor. It's been shown across history and is important for maritime warships and squads. It is important to understand that this is also important for Great Britain, because they will keep fighting to keep its sovereignty here. We know that the British Navy founded in different points of the world a little Zócalo, important for what in those years was the British Empire. In regards to Spain, in 1904, when Gibraltar was taken by Dutch troops and fleets and British fleets, Spain was the king. The war that they lived afterwards, which lasted for years, made Spain to accept the Treaty of Utrecht, and they must accept that they left Gibraltar. For me, surprising to see that many characters or leaders that are on the right wing of Spain, they're the ones that have been fighting for recovering sovereignty of this territory. They have been fighting for, well, as we were reminding later before, Spain achieved in the 60s to re-talk with Europe about decolonization of Gibraltar. It was Spain that established a bloc on that territory to apply pressure on the UK. It is surprising for me that some leaders of Spain that represent the left have considered this conflict to not, which is not like a conflict, an armed conflict, but on politics and sovereignty and the borders of Spain. Well, these leftists have been catalogued as traitors, and it is surprising for me that in this moment in which Europe is trying to recover its national identity, we're living this kind of attitude and witnessing these conflicts. It's amazing that a single political sector is fighting for sovereignty in Gibraltar, and I think it's not good for the Spanish state. I go back to Carlos, then I go back to you, Francisco. So, after the Utrecht Treaty in 1913, many attempts from Spain to recover this territory in Gibraltar have been unsuccessful. Why this? The first attempts were military attempts, so it was obvious that to the day the military forces of the UK are superior than the Spanish ones. And in these attempts to recover this sovereignty, the UK was supported by totalitarian and genocide dictatorship of Franco. From French socialists to UK conservative people just supported UK in order to oppose Spain, but Franco put a lot of pressure there. There are different interests here, especially economic and military interests. So it is really obvious that Spain hasn't been putting much effort or haven't been successful in this. It is good to know that Gibraltar is open now to connect with EU, but I think it's not worth to start a war, like an armed war, because in the end, the UK and Spain are partners and have different common interests. They are part of NATO. There are many bonds that are not worth breaking. There is a political will from both governments to leave this, to let this go. But now we heard that the Spanish government said that in a change of status regarding Brexit, Spain will claim its sovereignty on Gibraltar. I'll use this last idea to ask Francisco if it is Brexit at risk, if this conflict could be consequence or could create risk for Brexit. This topic has been treated in different ways now, so what do you think? Well, most of the EU are trying to work for peace. And it is true that Spain looks forward to enforce the protocol, and their arguments are kind of valid, but despite this, it's not going to be easy, and this is not going to be the topic to risk Brexit. But we must say that in the moments that we're living, in which Europe are trying to recover its national identity in different countries, for example, we have the Andalus Parliament, I think it's highly not good or damaging that many Spanish parties to split from this topic. But there is a problem, an important problem, and I want to remind you that some of the Conservative Party members in UK, when this conflict was being discussed, some of these members said that they don't agree with Mrs. May, as Margaret Thatcher did 35 years ago. They didn't agree with Theresa May to allow other governments to take power on many people that could produce for them. I think that Mrs. May will be and might remember the safeguards on nationality and sovereignty in Gibraltar. Thank you, Francisco. Thank you, Carlos, for your time. See you soon. Now we want to talk about electoral matters and how they've been used to solve this conflict. And why are they using these matters? Which results have this brought? Could Brexit and all the conflict that have been revived after this, could this be solved by any means? We will talk later with our next guest after the break. As we said before, the elections have been an alternative to solve this conflict on Gibraltar. The last 50 years, the inhabitants of this rock have been asking for a solution on this conflict. In 1967, the option of remaining under British sovereignty was voted with 99.4% of the votes by the inhabitants of Gibraltar. 2 years later, a Gibraltar constitution was established, while Spain reacted by closing its borders with Gibraltar. The government of Felipe González reopened these borders so Spain could be part of the EU. Then, in 2002, a new referendum was made on this conflict, but people in Spain said no on regards to recovering Gibraltar. A new constitution was made on Gibraltar, and they voted to be part of the UK. Felix Roque is with us now, international analyst, professor, writer, and lawyer. Welcome, Felix. Well, Professor, so I was telling our previous guests that it was important to solve a question, and I want to know which is your posture on what's the importance of Gibraltar. Why is this conflict has been developing throughout many years? What's the geostrategic and economic importance of this rock? Probably the tax haven condition of Gibraltar could be important for Spain, but many people says it's not an economic issue, it's a geostrategical issue. That's why there is a maritime navy base of the UK in this rock. Well, for our audience, we must say that this has an old history. In 1913, where the Utrecht Treaty was established, Spain granted Gibraltar sovereignty to UK. Many years have passed of UK sovereignty. Around 40,000 people live there. And so apart from its economic importance and touristic importance, we must say that the importance of geopolitics there is also huge. That's the entrance to the Mediterranean. So the English and Spanish and the North Americans are interested in its military importance due to its location. It's important due to its maritime location and connection to different seas. This rock is very important, and now with Brexit and the agreement that was just made in Brussels, in which any agreement between UK and Europe could be banned by Spain if they leave the EU, this heats up the conflict. Do you think that this conflict will risk Brexit? Till the last minute, Spain didn't know that there was an article that it could affect the UK on this conflict, but apparently the only one who didn't know about this was Spain. And it was an article that benefits them. Well, it is true that the Spanish government and its President Pedro Sanchez have been really out of focus in this conflict. There is a protocol in regards to Gibraltar in which Spain would win nothing in the future. But there is also this other right that benefits Spain. And any content of the Brexit protocol that involves sovereignty in Gibraltar must be treated first with Spain, not with Europe. What was achieved here brings a bunch of hypotheses on judicial matters. On one side, it is possible that UK, which I think is not going to happen, UK might leave its sovereignty on Gibraltar. The other possibility is that Spain will move will play its cards to impose its position, trying to win the sovereignty. Gibraltar people have denied to be part of Spain. They protest against the presence of Spanish police there. This means that the Gibraltar people don't want to be part of Spain. They are willing to be part of the UK. Another hypothesis that is also important There is the possibility of Gibraltar people to ban this protocol, the protocol on Brexit, right? Yeah. They could act to ban this protocol, and in these regards, then the UK could lose sovereignty in Gibraltar. How can they ban this? Well, as the people they are, the native people they are in Gibraltar, they consider themselves to be affected by Brexit. If they consider themselves to be affected by Brexit, they could try to ban this protocol because they weren't consulted on this, on Brexit. The UK kingdom and the Spanish kingdom, they feel so powerful to decide on the lives and fates of these people, which are actually residents, and they were not consulted on this conflict. Another thing that I was hearing on a Spanish academic is that with Brexit, the status of Gibraltar will... There is this case in which a country that has no participation in EU will remain its sovereignty on a colony that is part of EU, so this is also something they must discuss. By this time in the 21st century, can the Spanish or the UK or the British Kingdom keep sovereignty of this little territory that is still considered a colony? So I ask you, there is still imperial ambitions here that we thought that were extinct? Well, yeah. This was revealed after the Falkland Islands case, or Malvinas in Spanish. In which the UK was helped by the US. And this broke friendships with Argentina. There are still imperial ambitions and actions here. What is Spain doing while trying to keep possession of Gibraltar, while Gibraltar doesn't want to know anything about Spain? Puerto Rico, for example, is a colony of the US. But it's a known decision to keep this status. Now, among the hypotheses that we've been analyzing and treating on the show, if Spain keeps pressing, putting pressure on UK, but now we know that it's very difficult for them to win the sovereignty, if they win, can this change relations with Europe after the treaties signed in Brussels? Well, I think that Spain has a serious inner problem after an inner political crisis in between their own parties. The ultra-right just won in Andalusia, and many people from the left wing are losing power. The right wing is attacking even each time more. But even in between right-wing parties in Spain, there are conflicts. The bourgeoisie of Spain will affect negatively in these negotiations. Now we gotta consider that Pedro Sanchez took office after a political crisis, right? So we must consider this. How will these results in Spain affect this conflict on Gibraltar? Well, there is a big administrative disorder and a lot of corruption in Spain. These corruption cases that we've witnessed in the Popular Party. The president of this party just resigned as president of the party and of the parliament. these kind of conflicts will, well, made Rajoy to quit his position as president or prime minister of Spain. Well, the truth is that this kind of inner conflicts might affect the general elections called by Pedro Sánchez. Now, if we go back to the geopolitical conflict in Gibraltar, I want to ask you, is it convenient for Spain to close its paths to Gibraltar? Well, no, because Gibraltar is the entrance to the Mediterranean. It's also like the Strait of Suez. Many ships from Middle East pass by here. There is a lot of trade and tourism in Gibraltar. It is a transit area for many people that works there. There are even local industries there. So whoever blocks its borders with Gibraltar, it's going to be deeply affected. That would be an attitude that no one wants to take. A big part of the southern geography of Spain will be affected if they close its borders with Gibraltar. And, well, the less possible thing that will happen is that Gibraltar people will decide its fate, but they're too small and they're trying to do this. They don't want to be part of Spain, and they also seem to not to be eager to belong to the UK, so now they're trying to be an autonomous country. Most of the country voted on staying as part of EU. Can we think about a new consultation or referendum close? Can we imagine Gibraltar population deciding its own fate? Can they decide what they want to do after knowing these protocols and the Brexit conflict? Well, it's difficult. We got to remember that China brought back Hong Kong to its property after many years. So we've seen that little countries have claimed for its own sovereignty. The world is not the same as it was 300 years ago, and colonies are not as strong as they were before. Many European countries had colonies in India, Africa, Asia, but in a multipolar world that we're living now, in which relations are based on brotherhood and sovereignty, that's what defines people's fates. We've seen that international relationships are not the same as 10 or 100 years ago. So we must understand that if Spain, UK and Gibraltar want to live in peace, there must be consultations on Gibraltar. In this case of Gibraltar, is multilateralism being denied? Well, there are specific cases that must be solved in the dynamics of the same processes of dialogue. I can't think of Gibraltar holding themselves economically and politically in the future, so they're still putting pressure for sovereignty, for its own sovereignty. They don't want to belong to the UK or Spain, they want to be an autonomous nation, and the importance of this rock can be good for its own people to improve and defend their sovereignty as an autonomous country. I think that Ireland will try to enter the European Economic Society community, And we've seen the Basque country or Catalonia trying to establish their own economy, but in Gibraltar, it's the people who must decide its fate. Why has Spain not acquired sovereignty on Gibraltar? I think that Spain have had important issues throughout its history. When you read the Treaty of Westphalia, and you think of this war between Spain and Sweden and the Dutch for 80 or 100 years, you can see that Spain has been in constant wars throughout its history. They tried to take power in Gibraltar by force, by arms, but they failed. The English forces were superior in numbers as in weapons, so they won. And today, it's also not easy for them to take power of Gibraltar by armed conflicts. Spain must accept negotiations, fair negotiations, considering the parts involved in this conflict. Well, there are different factors here. First of all, tax havens were not made for people to be corrupt, as it has happened. But what has this caused? Switzerland was a tax haven, but now the system is crumbling after the corruption abuse that have taken place throughout history. Many measures, many countries have taken actions on this kind of corruption, and now we see that tax havens are just crumbling. They're being used as mechanisms to hide capital, and that must not be supported by anyone. This must be condemned, because that's against its own people's economy. Thank you, Professor. Thanks you for the invitation. Now we go to conclusions. There are many factors in this conflict: identity, economy, politics, geostrategy, tourism. This rock is the entrance to the Mediterranean Sea, and since the first half of the 18th century, this has been dominated by the UK, and after both world wars, the Civil War in Spain, it has been dominated by the UK. Now it is a strategic port for trade in the Mediterranean. That's why Spain will keep fighting for this sovereignty, but they have found inner conflicts in its territory in regards to this conflict. The conflict might not affect Brexit, but not because it's not important, but also because there has been agreements between Brussels and the UK, and Spain is all alone now. These articles have surprised the Spanish government. We must see what the most important things in these negotiations, but in the end, who is consulting the Gibraltar people? That's the key factor here. That's how we end today. Thanks for being with us, and until the next time.